It seems like you've been through a lot of different things in your life.
Like losing the freedom and getting it back.
Is that because of the whole cooperation thing?
I can't even leave the Southern District of Florida.
You guys had a lot of athletes, right?
Very rich people.
Were you trying to get sent to like a better place, meaning that like more white collar crime, you know what I mean? Like just like almost like not a resort, but you heard of those prisons, right? Like for like.
Yeah, I heard that a lot of the camps used to be like that, but what happened was, this is what happened. So like 20 years ago, they said that my camp was awesome. They said my camp had a golf course, you could fish with your family on visitation, but like COVID changed things a lot. And also the way that the law is, because they put so many low-level drug addicts and dealers in prison, that the prisons are overflowing. So like from what I was told by a lot of people, like Pensacola was a great place to be because that camp had weights, and it was, the security was really, really low. So they like, those guys got steroids in, they had supplements in. Like my camp on the Air Force Base was so strict. There was always guards all over the place. So there were guys that worked their way down from the medium to the low to the camp over a period of 10 years, 11 years. And they were like, man, I'd rather go to the low, man. There's so many guards at this prison. Like it's so strict. And they were on you for everything. Like they'd pat us down every time we left the cafeteria. So I think it just changed this. They're overflowing the prisons now. So they've changed a lot.
So no gym, you couldn't work out really, right?
Just body weight. And I worked out every day, but it was, body weight and stuff like that.
Did you have access to the internet? Were you able to follow news? Were you able to follow bodybuilding at all?
So the only access that I had was I was allowed to write for Muscular Development magazine. So they sent me the magazine every month. So I was able to read it, even though the magazines are behind, but right. I was able to read that, which was cool. And then via email, people would say, hey, here's what's going on in bodybuilding. The main thing that stuck out to me was people emailing me and say, hey, this person passed away, or this person, it seemed like a lot of people passed away while I was in there, which was sad.
Yeah, for sure, man. So what about books? Did you read a lot of books?
Man, I read over 200. Once I got to 200, I stopped writing them down. That was like the main way I did my time, because I like to read anyway. But the TV rooms are always drama in the TV room. People fight over what they're watching, and it's loud and crazy. Quiet. My dogs. So for me, I like to be alone. For me, the books were everything to me, because it kept me away from drama and trouble, and it helped my mind escape. Plus, I was really driven in prison to just make myself the best version of myself possible. Like I wanted to come home better, more educated, with a different mindset. So I read everything. So I read fiction, nonfiction, like as far as like fiction goes, like Atlas Shrugged was probably my favorite book that I read. But I also, there was a series called the Red Rising series, and we all passed those books around. Like that series was awesome, because if you like the Roman Empire mixed in with like mythology and like futuristic aspects of war, they're intense books. And so, but then on the flip side, I read a book called Man and His Symbols, which was a very interesting like psychology book. I read a couple books by Carl Jung that were very difficult to read. I had to read them very slow because I'm not a psychology major, so I had to really, I was fascinated by those books. I read The Mind-Gut Connection by Dr. Irvin Mayer, which is an awesome book on how like you're basically, the microbiome in your gut is like your epicenter of everything. It controls the way that your brain works, all kinds of stuff. So a healthy gut, like how the body follows with that, I thought was fascinating. I read a lot of good stuff in there.
So it seems like Aaron Singerman got out a year prior to you, right? Were you aware of that? And do you know why he got less time?
Yeah, people emailed me. They're like, you're never going to believe this. Singerman is out already. And people like in my family were mad about it. And I'm like, listen, it is what it is. I got to do my time. I can't worry about him. When you cooperate, they do things for you. You know what I mean? So I didn't cooperate. So, he agreed to cooperate. And because of that, they worked out a deal like, hey, you cooperate on this case and, we'll get you out. This is hard to get out of prison early. I was in there with very rich people. No exaggeration. A guy was a literal billionaire. This guy, Brett Lindbergh, you can read books about him. He was doing everything, fighting his case to get out. This guy couldn't get out. He finally appealed, beat his case, got out. And then we read in the Wall Street Journal that they hit him with another case. We're like, man, this guy should have let it go. So you can't just buy your way out of prison. You got to work out like a big deal with them. And you can get what's called a Rule 35. Rule 35B means you agree to testify in a case. And, if they get their conviction, boom, they send you right out.
It's crazy. So he came back, he got back into business almost immediately, right? Again, almost like, is that because of the whole cooperation thing, right? He was able to.
Yeah, I mean, Redcon wasn't involved in anything, so they let him go back to it.
Right.
So yeah, that's a whole separate entity. So he had never had any issues with that. So but I was surprised they let him go back to work so fast. He was traveling around and stuff. As soon like I can't even leave the Southern District of Florida.
See, what was it like to finally get out, to get back to the real world? You know what I mean? To be able to be free.
Amazing. The last day in prison is the best. I don't recommend anybody going to prison, but your last day in prison, for me, it was the most excited I've been in years. Like, this is the last time I got to do 10 o'clock count. This is the last time I'm getting patted down. This is the last time I'm getting yelled at by this person. And it was hard to sleep that night. And when I got out, the most beautiful thing that it hasn't changed, and I've been out for a little while, it hasn't changed, where every day I'm so grateful to be free. Like, losing the freedom and getting it back, I appreciate everything so much now. Like, so in a sense, it was a blessing because I wasn't present as much in the moment for years fighting my case. So I was always like, boom, 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 doing all this stuff. I really allow things to happen now, and I sit back and I appreciate things, and I'm full of gratitude. It's been, for me, I think it's made me better.
It seems like you've been through a lot of different things in your life, right? I remember when we first met, you had this incident when you went to the hospital because you were drinking a lot of vodka at the time, right?
Yeah.
You were down to like a bottle a day, right?
Yeah, I was drinking like, at one point during my divorce, I was drinking like a 1.75 every night when I would come home. It was bad.
You're a pretty extreme person. Like, you've been through things in your life that you had to overcome, right? Looking back at this prison experience and fighting the case and just until now, basically, right? What's the biggest sort of like lesson or regret, or maybe a positive something that you see in it that you can summarize?
I can't say that people ask me like, what would I do different? But I can't say that I would do anything different, because the moves that I made in the beginning of Blackstone Labs, made a lot of great things happen. And it's not like I knew like, I'm going to break the law now, because I never had that mindset. I never wanted to do anything that would cause any problems. So I think that my problem in my earlier years was I always thought I could go as hard as possible in everything that I do. And as long as I believe in myself, that's what matters the most, right? And yes, believing in yourself is key.
Before you went into prison, like maybe a year before, you made a very emotional post where you were talking about some kind of sickness that you've developed. I think it was during COVID.
Yeah.
You were doing a lot of IVs, but it came to a point where you weren't yourself anymore. Like, what was that about? And I know you got over it right before you went into prison, but what happened to you?
I have videos, like Marissa has videos on her phone, my fiance.
Huh?
I see them. I'm like, I can't believe I looked like that. Like, even now, like, I have like all my clothes, except for this, are like Blackstone Labs t-shirts. And like right now I wear a 2X or sometimes a 3X, but I had like larges, a lot of larges. And I was like, I can't believe I could fit into this. And she was like, you're really skinny. So it took a while for the doctors to figure out. They kept like misdiagnosing me, right? So eventually I had a specialist that diagnosed me with chronic active Epstein-Barr virus. And so basically Epstein-Barr virus is like when it causes mononucleosis. And a lot of people get that one time, when you're young or whatever, it makes you really tired and you never get it again. But mine, it wasn't staying dormant in my body. So for an entire year, I kept on getting mono and getting really sick. And I was having, my body wasn't retaining iron. So my iron was dropping so low, I had to have, in a period of 1 year, I had 6 iron transfusions. And so finally, I met a guy, his name is Dr. Zano, bodybuilder. And he was like, I think that I can help you. He's like, there's a protocol that I use to beat cancer. He had colon cancer. I said, man, I'll try anything, man. I couldn't even like scoop the cat's litter box without getting dizzy and exhausted. It was like screwing me up. It made me more and more depressed. So what I started doing was I bought an ozone machine, a machine that turns oxygen into pure ozone, right? So what I was doing was every morning I would take a organic green coffee enema, right? So I'd brew the coffee and I would do an enema, which people think is weird, but there's a lot of data that supports it's good for you. There's also data that supports it's bullshit, but whatever. Every morning I would do the green coffee enema, and then I would actually in my rectum, which sounds crazy, it's a tiny little thing that the ozone would go in through my rectum because I was trying to cure what was going on in my gut and kill the bacteria in there. So I did that for 10 days. And then every week I was doing very, very high dose vitamin C and glutathione IVs. So I would literally do 50 grams of vitamin C. So a lot of times if you go get a bag, they'll give you 5 grams, maybe 10 grams. I was literally doing 50 grams of, liquid vitamin C in an IV. And then at the end, I'd blast 1,000 milligrams of glutathione, which is the most powerful antioxidant there is. And after a couple of weeks of that, like people started saying like, man, the color's coming back in your face. And I started feeling like better. And I essentially cured myself like that, but I was giving myself IVs, but people thought I was crazy. Like I was literally putting the needle in my arm myself. And to be honest with you, I was worried when I was going away to prison about, because the doctor was like, listen, Epstein-Barr is triggered by stress and lack of sleep. And I'm like, well, I'm fighting the government to try to not go to jail. I don't know how to not have that happen. But when I went to prison, it all, like at that point it was all over, you know what I mean? And it went away. Like I used to have a lot of bad panic attacks. I was on different medications for that. And through everything that I went through in prison, I'm actually not on any medication at all other than HRT now. Like I was on Paxil, which definitely saved me, like as far as going through prison. I was on the max dose of Paxil, which guys take that and they were like zombies. But for me, it was really saving my panic attacks at the time. But once I was getting close to going home and I talked to the psychiatrist in the prison, I said, I think I've done enough work on myself and figured things out where I don't think I need medication anymore. And I'd like to be without it. So I tapered myself off of it slowly. And I've been off of everything. I haven't had any panic attacks. I still, stressful things happen, but I don't force what's going to happen. I allow things to play out because it's really out of my control. What God wants to happen is going to happen. So
yeah, that's crazy, man. I remember you making that post. You kind of opened up about it, and I kept thinking about it. Wow, I can't, because you weren't really talking about it before. You kind of revealed it. I remember, yeah.
And I got down to like 208 pounds at one point, and I was, it's not small, but for me, I used to walk around 230 with abs. You know what I mean? So and as big as 280 when I was competing. So and my face was so sucked in and weak, and man, it was rough. That was a rough time.
What about I think that was also during COVID years, or like 2020 or 2021. You helped discover Keon Pearson at one point. He was your athlete.
Yeah.
And you kind of helped propel his career in a sense, right? Now he's obviously very successful and he won the Olympia.
Yeah.
But you were at the beginning of his career, and then he made a public announcement that he's leaving you.
Yep.
Can you talk about that incident, and if you had a personal conversation with him about that before he made that public announcement?
So, when I got out of prison, I actually wrote him and I was like, hey man, you don't have to respond to me. I just want to let you know, like, I'm so proud of you I told you were going to be Mr. Olympia. Like I believed in you from the start, and it's so amazing for me to see that. Like, I'm so happy for you. And he wrote me back, thank you. I didn't even expect him to write me back. So, I don't want to have any bad blood with him. Keon was like, honestly, it sounds like crazy, but anybody around us knew, like Keon was like my son, man. Like I love,
I remember, yeah.
I still have a lot of love for him. So when after the Olympia where he got fourth, right? We had a talk in my kitchen one night. Him, his girlfriend at the time, me, Marissa. I was like, listen, man, your genetics, like you're made to be a bodybuilder. You were born to do this. You're stuck at 180 pounds. Like I tortured you. We're not even using gear to make this 180 pounds, and you know you're going after Bumstead. But the thing is, he's so much taller and wider. It's his division. Now, if you go into the 212, where everybody else is around your height, and you max yourself out with 30 more pounds of muscle, you're going to be Mr. Olympia for as long as you want. I believe that with all my heart. And he was like, man, I don't know. We had to talk about it. And that night was the decision he made to go to 212. I mean, he went to 200 like right away. So when all the COVID stuff was going down, people were talking about like George Floyd after George Floyd was murdered, right?
Yep.
And I didn't talk about it. I was like, I'm not interested in getting involved in any of this stuff. This is not my cup of tea. But I again was big ego. Somebody had offended me by saying that I wasn't using my platform, that I should be speaking out on this. So I spoke out negatively about George Floyd. And me doing that set off this chain reaction of different Black athletes were saying like Blackstone Labs is a racist company, PJ Braun's a racist. And I was like, all I said was that I don't support what's going on after George Floyd. People are destroying the country. You know, the guy was a bad man. I'm not saying he deserved to die. He certainly didn't deserve to die. The guy definitely did murder him, but all this other stuff is let the cops go to jail and rot in jail. That's it. But it turned into like this mess. So I know that people got in Keon's ear and they were like, listen, man, this is a bad look for you. You are representing this company that's racist. And I was hurt at the time because he knew I was moving him down there. I mean, I let him live in my house. So I was like, man, why are you not sticking up for me? Mm-hmm. But he was like, he wouldn't speak to me. He sent me a text message saying that he was leaving the company, right? And I was like, this is crazy, bro. I love you. I literally love you like a son. But he was catching a lot of flack from people that he respected a lot, like older people in the industry that were like, you're going to lose the respect of Black bodybuilders by staying with this man. And so he made that decision to leave. And I was very upset. I was angry. My heart was broken. But
I was upset too because I know how much he meant to you, and also how much he meant to you, and how much you meant for him as well. You know?
Yeah, it caused a crazy man. We lost at the time. There were certain people that were my friends that were Black that were like, "This is dumb, man. You've been my boy for years. I know you're not racist. You're just catching some bad at a bad time." I was like, I can't believe this is happening. So now, years later, there's people that have come to me that were like, man, I handled that the wrong way. And I'm like, it's cool. I don't have any hard feelings. But I also shouldn't have put the post out. I shouldn't have did it. It was stupid. All it did was cause me problems. It made me look bad. I shouldn't have I should have stuck to my guns of not saying anything.
That was a crazy time. COVID was a crazy time, right? Those 2 years were crazy.
Because you see now America, and in many ways, a lot of Americans have a different view of that whole period also. Especially when the different autopsy results started coming out. Still, I should have did it. It was in bad, poor taste at the time. But I tell you, man, like he was one of the people, like there was a group of people that I realized like I had fallouts with that hurt my heart when I was in prison. And he was one. Like when I found out he won the Olympia, man, I was like so happy. I shed a tear and I was like, I said this was going to happen. And I think he's going to be Mr. Olympia for a long time. Like I just never seen anybody look like him before in all my years. So
looking back at it, at some point, Blackstone Labs, you guys had a lot of athletes, right? A lot of different people used to sign. Looking back at it, do you regret not signing somebody who later became a big star in the industry that you had a chance to sign at one point?
It's a good question. Man, there were so many we signed a lot of different people at a lot of different times. In one aspect, I signed too many people because we were spending a lot of money on athletes. And it's tough to get everybody to do what you want. I think, people may be offended by me saying this. I think if you get one good athlete, make that your guy, build a company around him, that's plenty. If you have different people in different spaces, that's great. I was very proud of everything that we did with Cody Montgomery, the youngest USA winner. We had a lot of fun with him. I had a business with Kai Green. You guys remember that back in the day? Like, that was an amazing experience. I mean, Kai Green was one of the most famous bodybuilders ever. So if I could have got somebody early, man, Chris Bumstead is as popular as anybody I've ever seen.
Did you get a chance to sign him? Did you get a chance to sign him early?
No, I don't. We never even reached out to him. There's two people that I think you could do a lot with, and they're in the same spot. Is Chris Bumstead and Nick Walker, right? So Nick Walker, I met him at a natural body event, and I was like, this kid is massive. He's going to be everything. And he was with Condemned Labs at the time. And he was good friends with Joe Reiser, who was doing all his videos, that was also doing videos for me. And Joe was like, man, you gotta get Nick Walker. He's going to be the next big thing. So when I saw him, I was like, damn. And I was like, hey, we should talk. Meaning, hey, let's put an agreement together. And he was like, I'm under contract with Condemned Labs for another like 6 months. And I was like, oh, at the time, I was also going through like a legal thing with them. And I was like, I can't get involved in that. It's going to turn bad, which now I'm cool with those guys now. My partner, Jared, actually makes Condemned Labs products, but I'm like, they're going to think I'm poaching you. It's going to cause issues. And I completely backed off. And sure enough, I mean, I think Nick Walker is as popular as any bodybuilder out there. Like, that's a guy to build a company around,
Yeah, I agree with you.
I should have, that was one, I think if I went in on that was an investment I should have made for sure.
What do you think about Sam Sulek, his popularity in the industry?
So just like you said, the world has changed a lot since I've been out. People were talking about him. I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is. So I started watching his YouTubes, and he's a freak for sure. It's amazing how popular some people can get, because I got friends that have teenage kids that are like, my son is trying to be like Sam Sulek. My son is trying to be like Sam Sulek.
Right.
And I'm like, make sure you educate them on the right way to do things, the healthy way to do things, and to stay off gear as long as they can, because that's an unattainable goal for a 14-year-old kid, But I mean, hey, props to him for blowing up the way.
What do you think about upcoming Olympia?
It's a matter of time before they will get you.
Did it take everything away from you?
I didn't lose my fiance.
What do you want to achieve?
I might even sell workout equipment. Who knows?